Up+Adam.
Tractor systems are offline.
We are Beyond FM.
Beyond FM.
The future of broadcasting is here.
Up+Adam with Adam Montiel. It's community content from Concentrate. It's Up+Adam with Adam Montiel.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Yes, some say life is just where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Happy Tuesday. Happy True Crime Tuesday. Thank you so much for being Up+Adam. My name is Adam Montiel. Look, you ever stumble into a comedy show, then walk out thinking about murder? Yeah, that's what happened to veteran true crime producer Jodi Tovay, who was just trying to escape the rain at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival when she found herself in a pop-up comedy club face-to-face with a young comic named Edd Hedges. What he delivered wasn't just stand-up. It was a high-wire act between comedy and straight chaos. Because what started as a charity gig in his hometown turned into a true crime story, and Edd was in the middle of it. On this True Crime Tuesday, we're joined by the duo behind Wisecrack, a genre-bending podcast that dares to find truth, tragedy, and yes, even laughter in the same breath. Edd Hedges, a comic with a past that won't let go, a past that includes being bullied by the most popular kid in town. Then that same kid would later spiral into violence, murder his own family, and come looking for Edd, with him still on his mind. That terrifying night would change Edd forever, and somehow it's now at the heart of his comedy. Jodi Tovay, the storyteller who knew the world needed to hear this story, they both join us. They're from what is now the #1 comedy podcast in the country. Also, it's climbing up the true crime charts, called Wisecrack. We'll talk to them later in the show. A few little nuggets here. One, Santa Barbara paying you to ditch your lawn. The city just launched a new rebate program where residents can earn up to $5 a square foot for swapping out their thirsty grass for water-wise plants and rain gardens. Do the math. Single-family homes can pocket up to $5,000, while bigger multifamily, even commercial properties can rake in as much as $15,000. Here's the deal. The lawns that guzzle water, storm drains carry polluted runoff straight into creeks and the ocean, and really everyone ends up paying the price. But when you disconnect your downspouts and let rain soak into the ground, or better yet, capture it in a rain garden, you save water, cut flooding, and clean up things before it even hits the coast. The program looks like it's already proving itself. The Santa Barbara Association of Realtors put it in at their headquarters and dropped their water use by 79%. The city says besides saving money, you're boosting drought resilience, reducing flooding, and improving water quality. But heads up, it's not retroactive. You got to apply to get approved before you start digging up your lawn. Details and applications on the city's site at santabarbaraca.gov. Now, if the state can just figure out how to not waste all this rainwater. All right, check this out. You know how people went from cable to streaming to save money, only to watch streaming become more and more like cable, like expensive? Well, the taxi to rideshare swap might become just as pointless. Uber has started testing a new form of payment, cash. What do you know? They've been introducing it in select cities over the past few weeks, and it just hit some bigger markets, including LA, San Diego, Dallas, and Orlando. Uber says the idea is to expand transportation access to everyone, and not just everyone that has a bank account or a credit card. Some riders just prefer cash. You still need a cell phone, though, or a way to book through the app. Basically, you book the ride as usual, and you select the cash option for payment, and then you hand over the bills and coins when you get to the destination. It's also optional for drivers. They have a setting on there that can be set to accept cash or not, although some drivers say the feature was abruptly added to their accounts without warning, and accepts cash was the default. It's optional, so it's not a huge deal, but some drivers are upset. The main one is that they're worried about this might create a safety concern, because now they could be targeted if thieves think they're carrying cash. There are also issues with handling cash, like customers expecting change if they overpay, or awkwardness with tips, getting Uber its cut of the fare when they've paid in cash, and also dealing with people who skip out on a fare. Uber may be even expecting some of these issues because they're not allowing cash payments after 11 p.m. And I just wonder from a principle like the cord cutting aspect of it, rideshare attracted riders by promising a hassle-free digital experience, right? Fair rates, fair for riders, fair compensation for drivers, and no tips. And surprise, it's becoming like the taxi industry all over again. All right, finally, do we really need more terms like this? Feels like people can't even agree on what this new one means. Have you heard the new term clock botching? A writer in the UK coined it last month. It means one of two things, maybe both. The term alone sounds like it's one tongue twist away from an FCC violation. Thank God we're past them. Forbes describes it as when you look busy but aren't actually producing any meaningful results, or maybe stretching small tasks into entire afternoons. And that makes it sound intentional, like you're just trying to run the clock out each day, not get much done. Clock botching. But we've already got terms for that. We've heard of like task masking and faux activity for sure. The original definition is different though. The writer who coined clock botching said it's when workers end up doing more hours than they're paid for. Not out of ambition, but because they can't get through their workload in time. She also says clock botchers are usually the first ones in the office and the last ones to leave. So it makes it sound like it's not intentional when you have that definition. There's just too much on their plate. A writer for Inc. magazine confused things even more by saying it's an aggressive form of clock watching, where you're just counting the minutes before you leave work. And who knows, maybe it's all of the above. But whatever it is, whatever it means, they all agree it's a serious problem in 2025 caused by burnout, people feeling less engaged overall. All these big publications, Metro, Forbes, Inc., all writing about clock botching. All right, let's get right into it. Our chat with Edd Hedges, also Jodi Tovay on a True Crime Tuesday. Thanks so much to our friends here at Life Elements for being Up and Adam. Really love the stuff that they're doing. They're in a back corner of a plaza in Atascadero, and Martha is straight up practicing wellness alchemy. Everything small batch, cruelty-free, made with real healing in mind. In addition to their wellness products right out of their spot in Atascadero, you could shop their products at the Hive in Arroyo Grande, also the General Store, downtown Paso. But I encourage you to check them out. 7425 El Camino Real, Suite O, back right corner of the plaza. Can't miss it. Life Elements. And check them out online, lifeelements.com. No matter where you are, you could support them. Check out their incredible healing products. Lifeelements.com. Use promo code Adam. Save 15%. Support local and let your wellness meet its maker.
It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
All right, today, True Crime Tuesday, we're welcoming two people who are doing something nobody's ever really done before, blending true crime and stand-up comedy into a story that's somehow terrifying, hilarious, and all completely true. Edd Hedges is a rising star in comedy known for his sharp wit, raw honesty on stage. But what happened to him in 2015, the night he came home to do a charity gig in his village, is the kind of thing no one can make up. A hometown bully turned murderer, a terrifying knock at the door, and a moment that changed his life forever. And sitting next to him, Jodi Tovay, a 4-time Emmy-nominated true crime producer who stumbled into Edd's set at the Edinburgh Fringe and never looked back. Together they created Wisecrack, the new hit podcast that tells Edd's story in a way you've never heard before.
So that noise you heard, the banging, I woke up on the 22nd of July 2015 to that noise coming from my front door. And at the end of my bed, staring out of my window, there is someone standing. She is terrified. She says the words to me, "Whatever you do, do not turn on the lights."
Mrs. Phillips suffered at least 41 stab wounds to the head, neck and torso. She was pronounced dead at the scene.
Does anyone know what show they've come to see? Well, it's a story, and it's about the scariest night of my life.
Climbing both the comedy and true crime charts, was #1 on comedy, ahead of Joe Rogan. Check it out. Let's welcome Edd, Jodi. Thanks, guys, so much for being Up and Adam.
No worries at all. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, so Edd, I'm so curious. Stand-up is about control, timing, delivery, rhythm, and true crime is like chaos, shattered timelines, broken lives. But in Wisecrack, you're really making them dance together, and it all stems from one terrifying night. What was the moment, maybe Ed, on stage or off, where you realized that what happened was a story that you could tell, but one that you really had to tell?
So there were 2 points. The first one, when I started doing this show, I didn't start doing it as a comedy show. I just told it as Storytelling Nights. To be truthful, I never really had the idea that I would turn it into a comedy show, because that was the furthest thing from my mind. In Storytelling Nights, it was really good. People engaged. When I did it at Comedy Nights, oh my God, it was awful. People didn't want to hear about it. They were like, they said what people think. They were like, comedy isn't murder. This isn't good. There were a lot of bad shows before I got it to pop. But there was one show I did in London on like a Tuesday night in front of 30 people, where the comedy brought the low back. So it's like you say, it's a high and low show. I go really high with the comedy and really low with the serious parts. And there was one night where I managed to get them back from the serious part, and I was like, oh, how good would it be if I could do this for an hour? This would be really special. And that night carried me through another, I'd say, 6 months of awful shows before I got to work.
So interesting, kind of like how you structurally kind of figured it out. Now, you've called this your scariest night by far. I totally get it. But the fear didn't just come from the crime. It came from the past as well. What's the emotional math of stepping on stage to entertain a room, knowing that the man who bullied you is now behind bars for murder, with you still on his mind, maybe?
Yeah, it was a really tricky thing. I had to ignore a lot of my better judgment, because you don't want to talk about someone that has done that. You don't want to make the wrong enemy. And as enemies go, this guy is probably the worst enemy you could have in your phone book. So it was a juggling act of figuring out what I can and can't say. Truthfully, about 2 minutes into the show, I get carried away and I let it all out. And people that listen to Wisecrack will see that there are no details that are held back. But it was definitely scary. To this day, it's definitely scary, because there are people in my village, when Jodi and I went back, they don't want this talked about. They don't want their property prices to go down because this is out there. Me and Jodi got kicked out of 2 or 3 pubs for mentioning the name. So yeah, there's definitely risk attached to it.
Almost 10 years ago, Jodi, you ducked into this little pop-up club and just to escape the rain, right? But that moment changed your life. It became the start of Wisecrack. What did you see in that little-known comic on stage, Ed, that made you think, this isn't just funny, this is a story that I need to help tell?
My day job is a TV true crime producer. So I was on vacation and I was like, what's the farthest thing away from crime and murder? Well, I should just go to the stand-up show.
Right.
And my lack of preparation of not having an umbrella really led me to Ed. It really was truly happenstance, but in the best way. And I will say, I think once I heard the story and realized that there were many crimes attached to it, I think the hardest part was trying to convince Ed to tell the story, because it's one thing to be able to control your story live on stage. It's another thing to trust someone else to do more investigation around something that, I don't want to speak for you, but Ed, but maybe something that you were like, I don't want to know everything, because it keeps me a little safe. So pushing someone to do that is challenging, and obviously pushing a comedian to be authentic and honest and with their feelings is a whole other crime committed against me.
I'm so curious more about you, Jodi, because look, true crime is sacred territory, victims, families, grief. But then again, I've told this story on my show too. Like, my fiance knows I'm always using my sense of humor to get me through things, out of things. I mean, I have been since I've been a kid. So comedy always has been a way that we survive, sometimes even the unspeakable. How do you both, but Jodi first, how do you navigate the line between laughing about trauma and then maybe laughing through it?
It's really tricky. It's kind of like how Ed was saying before, that he had a lot of fails and was extremely vulnerable with his story before he figured out how to tell it. And then it took me some time to convince him that we should tell it. And then it took me a lot of time to figure out how to do it. It was a lot of trial and error, just being very frank. I worked for a long time at a big media company, and we did crime TV shows. And I was always told when we were receiving pitches, that we can't. I preferred the funny stories, right? Because I wanted to laugh through these upsetting things. And I was told that those two emotions don't live together. So I was always evaluating it through that lens. And I really thought about it. I was like, is that true, or is that just something that we don't want to do? And I think when I heard Edd's story, I was like, oh no, you can do that, because those feelings are actually quite close. They're on the opposite ends of the spectrum, but what do they say? It's the horseshoe theory. You get they're two opposite sides, but they're actually quite close. And so again, just working to tell it and failing a lot.
Well, tell me a little bit about your career. How did you get into such a unique production niche? And then what about where you were in your path made you want to start flirting with, pushing boundaries that maybe you're being told don't belong?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly knew that I wanted to be either a journalist. I think at one time a Broadway singer. That was when I was 6, and then I realized I couldn't sing. And then and a TV producer. I love documentaries, so that's kind of just how I fell into it. And when you do one, and they're like, "Oh, we like it, and give us more." So that was kind of how I got into it. Yeah, well, sorry, what was the second part of your question? I apologize.
Oh, no, and really, because, the previous answer where you talk about how, you were, you kind of got into, maybe pushing that button, or at least exploring where, why can't these things work together? But you obviously were enough in your story and in your path where you're like, I could try this.
Yeah, I think that was exactly that, is if once you get pushed into one genre, you do it over and over and over again for a job. It's a lot of copy paste. So you're always looking for ways to entertain yourself or to find new ways to tell the story. And so, again, once I heard Edd, he had figured it out at that point, or figured out places to work. And I didn't need to be convinced at that point, because I had heard so many crime stories before without the heart and the humor. But now we've got both. And I guess lucky me.
Yeah. Edd, you go from London stages, tours, and then right back to the charity show that becomes Homecoming, right? When you stood in that venue again after years of being away, could you feel the past in the room? Did the village feel smaller? Did you just grow too big to fit in? What did you feel?
It was trippy. I left the village as a total loser. It was a case I was a overweight kid that didn't do great in school and went and tried comedy, and it worked out. Going back to the village, I was really scared that story about me being a loser would follow me there, and I would be viewed as a loser. But honestly, it was lovely. I got to see my school teachers and some school friends and some local business people like the owner of the cafe, things like that. They got to see me in a whole new light. It kind of felt like vindication a little bit, and it was great. But I was terrified to go back, because I didn't want to become who I used to be when I left. I left for a reason, but it worked out okay.
Let me ask you, and then this is another one of those questions I feel like both answering would be really interesting. But Edd, most people choose a lane. They choose true crime. They choose comedy. But you two created a whole new highway, fast lane changing between tragedy, timing, stand-up, suspense. And when you first started, and Jodi's kind of wondering if she can punch holes in this and this might work, did it feel like alchemy, or did it almost feel like anarchy? How did you first start tasting all this and going, I don't know?
I didn't know what true crime was. I'd never listened to a true crime podcast. I'd never watched a true crime documentary. I knew there were documentaries about crime, but I had no idea true crime was a thing, and such a big thing. For me, this was always a story about a crazy thing that happened to me one night. And then when Jodi saw it, I remember sitting with her in this little bar in Edinburgh, and she said, "This is obviously a true crime story." And I had to get her to explain to me the genre, everything. And since doing it, I've met true crime fans, and they're so passionate, and this is such a big thing. But yeah, I had to be educated on all of this. I was ignorant to the whole industry. I don't know if that came across.
Yeah, now Jodi,
it was clear.
Yeah. I was to Jodi, is this like, oh my gosh, this is going to be an uphill challenge? Or is it almost like, perfect, he doesn't know anything?
I think it gives our project a lot of legs to stand on, because he wasn't angling to capitalize in a gross way, if that makes any sense.
Totally
it was
does.
really just storytelling and I think I've heard Ed say this before, like just kind of feeling my way through what happened. And so it was great for me, and I think the hardest part is just for me was just working across the pond, across COVID and a bunch of stuff. Like that was really it. But yeah, it was a bit alchemy in that moment because I was like, oh my God, this kid cracked it. He knows how to do both. And then it was my job to convince him. And the convincing also took some time, but here we are, and it ended up great.
Now, while some stories haunt us, some might heal us, Ed, yours seems to do both at the same time. And Jodi's right in the way she says it. It's like, wow, you cracked this. Has telling the story in public over and over, has it helped you move through it, or has it kind of anchored you in it?
It's a really good question. I think the former. I think I'm from a very working class background. We don't get in our feels very much. Like if something bad happens to you, you get your head down, you keep working, you move through it. When I was telling this story, I was telling it from a place of, hey, listen to this crazy thing that happened. But definitely there's been a lot of therapy in there. And that's something that I've not really wanted to say to people, because you can't replace therapy. Therapy is really important if you go through something like this, and that's been made apparent to me. But initially, the months after it happened, and I had no one to talk to about what happened, and I was struggling to understand what it meant and where I stood in it, saying it out loud to a room full of people made it real and made me kind of feel heard, for want of a less emotional word. But like I say, I'm from a working class background. No one in my family works in the arts. We're builders, we're carpenters, we're electricians. This was very new to me.
Sometimes, what, at least for me, some of the more fascinating aspects of the process are what's left on the cutting room floor. And in telling a story like this, and Jodi, kind of as you are, working with him on this, were there aspects of the story that either, Jodi, you're like, yeah, I don't know, Ed, or maybe Ed was like, no, that part, yeah, you get it, but I didn't want to go there. Were there parts where that just felt better, maybe not coming out?
That's a really good question. Truthfully, we lay most of it on the line. There was very little from your set and my investigation that we left on the table. I'm really trying to think of anything. I think you really are getting quite a comprehensive story. I'm sure you cut lots of jokes, right? Or move things around.
There were a few jokes that I cut just because they weren't needed and they weren't necessary. And to be honest with you, they weren't funny enough. But I would say there's more stuff in the podcast that I'm deeply uncomfortable being there than it isn't, to be truthful with you. There are still parts of the podcast that I listen to and I'm like, gah.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but Jodi's like, look, we had to put those in. Those are...
Well, yeah, Jodi kind of said, we had to have a really difficult conversation early on where Jodi laid it on the table and said, look, if we're doing this, we're giving the audience what they want. We're giving them the story. We're not hiding anything from them. We're not manipulating what this is. If they're listening to it, they're listening to the truth and they're listening to all the facts, or we don't do it at all. And at first I was like, well, we don't do it at all then. And I had a little huff. And then I thought about it and I went back to Jodi and I was like, look, it's not fair for me to say I want people to hear this story, but I want them to hear my story. I want to hear my version. I want to be in control of the narrative. So I had to let go of being the good guy, being the hero, being not that I ever was that, but I had to be comfortable with the fact that, hey, when this is made, I could be the villain. I could be not good. And there's still an element of that. People could listen to this and think, I really don't like Ed. And I'm kind of okay with that.
That's huge. And I almost wonder, there's a cathartic, unique therapy that was offered to you in a process as unique as this, right?
Yeah, there was, but there was also a lot of really confronting things. Some of the details that I heard that night, they're good for me to know, but they're deeply uncomfortable. Things like how gruesome the crime scene was. Up until that point, it was someone at my door that did a terrible thing. But learning exactly what happened in that night, learning that there was a struggle, learning things like that, learning the mental side of what happened, and also learning how close this was to me in terms of geographically, emotionally, and my personal life story. That was difficult for me to swallow.
How do you deal with, that was a traumatic night. How did you process that then? Are you a panicker when things happen like in the moment, or do you kind of slow down and go, okay, boom, boom, boom? How did that whole situation treat you in the moments, and then even as time progressed off from that until it evolved into this?
I handled it badly. I was not the Jason Bourne that I thought I would be. I was not Reacher. When I woke up and found someone standing at the end of my bed, I did not react well. You kind of freeze. I think a lot of guys have it where they're like, I would just see red and I would jump up and I would do a single leg takedown and then get him in an armbar. No, what actually happens is you sit there and you go, "Ah, ah, ah, ah," and then whatever happens, happens. So yeah, I wasn't an action hero, dude. I just watched what was happening and was like, oh, I hope this doesn't end badly for me.
Right.
And then therapy too. You went to therapy too.
I went to therapy, and my therapist, when he started talking to me, was like, wow, this is a big one. This one's going to take some time.
I ain't cut out for this
isn't
shit.
A daddy issue. It's not a daddy issue at all. This is some deep stuff.
Right.
My therapist quite a lot is like, I'll say something and he'll say, you know, that's deeply troubling. And I'm like, is it? Oh.
Jodi, were there times at this where you're like, God, I mean, you know, because you begin to feel for Edd, you begin to like him as a man and a friend, and you're like, is this good for his healing? But then at some point you must be assured that it is, because it's working and it is therapeutic in its own unique way. But how are you kind of like monitoring this and having your finger on the pulse of Edd's, you know, evolution?
It's really interesting. I think the way that I knew that it was helping, not hurting, is there would be one line when I'd see him perform that would be a little different. And then I'd say, oh, you said it differently than last night. And he'd say, yeah, I thought about it a little bit more. And it was really reflection lines. It was not jokes. Like, there was always jokes. There was always jokes that were moving, but there was more reflection that slowly crept in over time. So at least I knew that I wasn't actively traumatizing him. I was aware that you were also going to therapy, which was good. And I also felt like some of this was therapy too. So I should send you an invoice, honestly.
Yeah, sure.
For all the
This must have just an experience. You know, it's so interesting when paths will cross and circumstances will happen and lead you into a path. And here you guys are both sitting next to each other and would have never, might have even crossed paths ever. Isn't that neat?
Yeah, it is really weird. The whole thing, right? And this is what I've said to people from the start. If I'd have planned this, right? If I had like a business mindset and I would have been like, I'm going to do boom, 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 I couldn't have done this. There's no way I could have taken a story that as mad as the one that I lived through, like a horror story essentially, and brought it to 1,000+ people in Denver. In my head, this was a thing that I did in front of 50 people a night in Edinburgh, and then it was done. But we couldn't have planned any of this. And I'm a kid from a tiny village in the middle of nowhere. Jodi's a big shot, like, entertainment person from Atlanta. This shouldn't have worked.
Right. Yeah, tripping out like you're in your childhood home, banging on the door, woman stands at the end of the bed, whatever you do, don't turn on the lights. Like, that's literally a horror movie. What did, you know, we talked about that, but in this split second, does your comedy disappear, or are you still dealing with trauma in the moment with funny type of synapses? You know what I mean?
So like in terms of when I was there in the night and it was happening to me,
Yeah.
When I was there in the night, there was nothing funny about it at all for me. I wasn't even thinking, and I didn't think anything funny about it for years, probably. It was like a year of me telling it at storytelling nights just to be like, people should hear about this. This is a too crazy a story to not tell to people. I didn't even flirt with comedy for a long time.
Where do you think, I'm so curious now, where do you think that first stitch of comedy got woven in? It goes from storytelling, it gets told this certain way, you've played it in your head over and over again, but at some point, that one thread gets woven in that first time. Remember what it was?
Yeah, I remember it. I remember everything about it. It was a Tuesday night in a comedy, not in a comedy club, in a artist bar called the Phoenix Artist Bar in Covent Garden in London. I was telling the story and I said something about my mum, who was there obviously in the night, and the audience looked a bit confused. And I said, sorry, like, I checked in with them. I was like, what are you confused about? And they were like, well, why was your mum so confused? And I said, well, my mum's always been a confused person. In 2006, she became an accidental meth dealer. And they laughed. And I was like, oh, I just told you about some gruesome stuff. And now you're laughing. I really like that. I like that you were down here. And I like that I brought you to here. And if I can do that for an hour, this is something. So, yeah, it was mum dealing meth.
It's so interesting because, like, I was talking to Colin Mockery recently from Whose Line Is It Anyway? And just like you know, isn't he great? And we were telling each other that we were both telling each other that first story where, you know, I may have been 10 and I ripped a tent at karate camp. It was my first time outdoor sleeping. And I said, don't worry, our door's always open. And all these kids laughed and I was like, oh my God. And then you're like, how do I chase this feeling? You know what I mean? And here you, Jodi, it's so interesting because here he is trying to like find this comedian in him and evolve that, which is very tough. But then here you are trying, you know, you're reining him in there and directing him over here. And it's really this beautiful dance that you get to see two talented paths really kind of go in their own unique direction, but in a certain direction that they never would have without meeting each other.
Yeah, all I heard was we're talented paths. Good job.
Yeah, I picked up one. Jodi got called young on a call earlier.
I did. I got called young. I was like, I'm just going to call that out again and reiterate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind. And again, I think that the only reason that this, if it works for you as a listener, I think it's just because it took a really long time and we just failed so many times until we both brought our two mediums together.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. It would have been very easy to make this podcast, to make Wisecrack, scandalous, and it would have been very easy to blow it up and make it like a Hollywood thing. Our North Star that we've been following throughout this is, what do the listener need out of this? And it's always been honesty, empathy, the facts, and give them everything raw. Let them deal with it how they want to. There's a lot of lines a lot of things are said in Wisecrack that are really harrowing. And we could have sugarcoated it, or we could have made it worse. We delivered it as it is. So I think doing what's best for the listener throughout has been our guiding light.
Mm-hmm.
What an unlikely pair and story and like feature, but like what? I'm just so thankful that everything happened the way it did, because look, this show was made and this conversation got to happen. I have really loved chatting with both of you, Jodi and Edd. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you had half as fun as much as I did just now.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being Up and Adam, guys.
Thanks, man.
Hope
See you later.
love to cross paths again with you guys. This will be another fun chat later down the line.
100%. 100%.
We're very happy to.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. See you later.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
What a ride, huh? Big thanks to Edd Hedges, Jodi Tovay for joining us today and sharing a story that's as unforgettable as it is unthinkable. Like, what? If you haven't already, go check out their podcast called Wisecrack. It's streaming now wherever you get your podcasts. Not your typical true crime show, for sure. You'll find links to Wisecrack along with Edd and Jodi's socials and more in the show notes at your fingertips. Man, you know it's getting closer and closer. The 41st Annual Central Coast Writers Conference. It is back. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I'm going to be hosting a workshop called The Art of the Interview. It goes down September 26th and 27th. Whether you're a writer, podcaster, journalist, or just someone who wants to ask better questions that actually pull answers, this session will be for you. I'm excited to do it with you. I'm just going to open my brain and just go bleh. So who knows what's going to happen? Everything I've learned is fair game. But that's just one piece of it. This is just one piece of it. This conference is stacked. From best-selling authors to screenwriters, editors, poets, publishers, it's 2 full days of workshops, live readings, feedback sessions, and creative energy you don't want to miss. I love the theme. Simple 2 words. It's time. And if you have had that dream brewing inside you for years about when to write that thing, that book, that memoir, that whatever, it's time. Check it out. Links in the show notes to the Central Coast Writers Conference. Would love to see you there. All right, what a day. True Crime Tuesday. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk to Adam Lockwood. We had to postpone this interview a week or so ago, and it will all make sense tomorrow. In fact, I could tell you now. Check out, I'm going to put a link to in the show notes to Adam Lockwood's Instagram. Dude climbed the Eiffel Tower and jumped off of it. It happened about a week or so ago. It's just kind of now, he just posted on it yesterday, and it's just now kind of hitting blogs and news sites. And we talked to him just before this happened, and there's a lot of things kind of swirling and working. But tomorrow, the Adam Lockwood interview, it's going to be something I'm very excited to share with you. He is really one of a kind. Free climber, no ropes, no permission. He's base jumping off these things. It's just wild to watch it, all in the name of mental health, which seems crazy enough to me, but it's the perfect kind of crazy. We'll talk about it tomorrow when we talk to Adam Lockwood. All right, thanks to Moonshiner Collective for being Up and Adam. A song called Start Again, original music. Learn more, moonshinercollective.com. Happy harvest to my friends at Tamber Winery, Timbre, tamberwinery.com, home of the Tamber Lowbro Studios. Taste their wines in the village of Arroyo Grande, tamberwinery.com. Thank you for rating, reviewing, subscribing to what we're doing here. Appreciate you sharing it with a friend. Means a ton. Till tomorrow, I'm Adam Montiel, hoping you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for being Up and Adam.
Some say life's where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again. Let's start again. We'll start again. Let's start again.